Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. India is now one of the fastest growing economies in the world. In terms of GDP, India has recently overtaken the United Kingdom. However, India's unemployment rate is at a record high. India's trade deficit is at a record high, and so is a prolonged inflation in India. So, what is the actual reality of India's economy? To talk on this, we have with us today a very distinguished guest, Dr. Arvind Mayaram. Dr. Arvind Mayaram is the ex-Finance Secretary of India. He has been India's alternate governor in the board of the World Bank, and he has also been India's finance deputy in the G20. Dr. Arvind Mayaram was in the board of the Reserve Bank of India and SEBI. I'll come to the next one, which is about slightly related to inflation, which is about the excise duties that has been charged by the governments on oil prices since 2014, and it was at 3 rupees per liter of diesel in 2014, and for petrol it was 9.2 per liter. In 2017, it went up to 17.3 rupees per liter, which was a 600% increase. And for petrol, it was 21.48, which was a 150% increase. And today it is at 19.98 per liter for petrol and 15.8 per liter for diesel. And in between, it had gone even more up during COVID. What do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of collecting revenue under the heads of petrol, diesel, and oil prices, which are an integral part of inflation? And one more thing I'll add here, sorry, that in LPG, according to an article by Times of India and a few others, by purchasing power parity, India's price of LPG is the highest anywhere in the world. So collecting revenues under these heads, what do you think are the rationale and advantages, disadvantages?
The advantage is very clear because it gives revenues to the government. Like I said, government is making a huge amount of money because of inflation. So one could argue that when the finance minister says it is not my red line priority, she's not speaking irrelevantly. I mean, it means that it is giving government a lot of revenues. So there is no doubt about that. But what we must remember is that, again, it does not give, I do not see any strategic thinking or understanding of the economy as a totality. So there are, kind of different pieces of economy which are being looked at by the policymakers independent of each other. So here is petroleum. So here is something which the revenue department would say is fantastic because we are being able to collect X amount of revenue. 27 lakh crore is the number last I heard that the government of India had been able to accrue to itself through excise and cesses that they put on petroleum products, which is a huge amount of money in their hand. But they don't realize that because it feeds into inflation, etc., poverty increases, their cost of welfare goes up. So I always believe for governments, it's a zero-sum game. You never win.
There's no. If you choose to collect revenue, they are discretionary, right? So which heads you choose?
So my point is, therefore, I would also like to ask this question. If we have raised 27 lakh crores because of very toxic high taxation, why do we still have 6.7% fiscal deficit? Stated deficit. I mean, this year it's going to be 6.6 or 7, something like that. Which means the government still is borrowing very heavily, despite the fact that it is taking this. Which means that obviously there is a problem with their expenditure. Should they be spending as much as they are spending? Should they be spending that much as they are spending? I mean, I can understand they are making huge roads. The Minister of Surface Transport has done a remarkable job with the roads. I must say, his performance is very good in terms of physical performance. But my point is, did we need the expansion of those roads so quickly by spending the amount of money that we are spending on those? Collecting so much of money from public and then also taking so much of loans, fiscal deficit, increasing our fiscal deficit so much. But then there are others also. We have, I would not say Central Vista, but a lot of people say that also was a wasteful expenditure. We didn't need to do that at this point. It is a very beautiful, it has come out very beautifully, I must say that. But the fact is that it has a cost. So these are just, small examples, but there would be several other similar examples you can take where expenditure perhaps was not warranted at this point of time. Not that it was not warranted at all, but we have to prioritize expenditure, which we are not being able to do. So as a result, you are running into this huge problem of having to tax everything. And the GST has completely become a mess. On yogurt, you have a GST now. On milk, you don't have. All kind of things. I went to one sweet shop in Jaipur, which is a very old sweet shop in Jaipur. They keep some 200 items, different type. They make different type of mithai and things like that. And the guy there was pulling his hair. He said, I don't know what to do with the GST because or if I make it paneer, there is a different GST. And if I do a dahi, it is, yogurt, it's another GST. And so I don't even know how to calculate these stuff. So we have complicated it so much just because we think this way we can raise more revenues. But it is only creating a more problem for us. It's not really helping the economy. Despite all the expenditure, let me ask this question. With all this expenditure that the government is doing, with all the fiscal deficit that they have, kind of built up, what is the impact on the economy of this? If it was a positive impact, if the economy was growing at 9%, if the unemployment rate was down to 4%, I would say very good. We have done well. But we are not. So we are only adding to inflation. We are only adding to unemployment. We are only adding to poverty. But we are, spending more and more money. We are raising more and more taxes. We are borrowing more and more. I don't understand where is this big strategic thinking in this.
Okay, in this context, I would ask you one more thing. In 2019, in the context of poverty, there was an election manifesto in which Rahul Gandhi was calling for one last assault to poverty in India, where he was talking about implementing universal basic income as is done in developed countries. Do you think for a country like India, it is possible to ever get rid of entire poverty and a universal basic income like in a developed world can be implemented? And do you think it would be beneficial for India?
I really think so. And it can be done. It can be done, and I think it can be done without very much additional cost. See, it has to be a package. It cannot be an additionality in itself. So if you come up with a universal minimum income principle, then many other subsidies and other benefits and other things that we are now giving for poverty, for poor people, etc., will all have to be withdrawn. So if you quantify the total amount of money which goes into all this, 6,000 rupees per year to the farmer, petroleum whatever subsidy, gas subsidy, this, that, and the other. If you remove all those subsidies, all these, if you remove, then you can actually, or at least large part of them, let me say, if you remove, then you can find enough money to be able to provide minimum incomes to people. and which will in effective manner tackle poverty.
Which do you think is a better way of tackling poverty, giving subsidies or giving a universal basic income, which will be cash in hand?
In my sense, cash in hand is better. People can make their choices. We believe in the government. We believe as officials and officers that we have a better sense of what people need than what they have themselves, which I think is erroneous. We believe that if you give them money, they will spend it on buying a motorcycle and they will not buy medicine. It is wrong. After all, people with their own incomes also, when they earn, even the poorest, even everybody else, Indians all have a sense of thrift. Everybody saves a little. So I don't think it is a bad idea to provide cash in their hand as an income, which they can use.
Right. That sounds very interesting, because actually that's what developed countries do as well. They don't give a ration, but for families with a certain amount of kids, they give a certain percentage of money into their hands, which they believe they would use for the children. And
Yes.
that is the way it works.
Of course, it has to be a more sophisticated elimination. For instance, the government must very clearly say that it would be only for the total number of persons which will be considered as a family unit will not be more than 5, because we cannot make it as an incentive for higher number of children. So in India, we'll have to work those things out.
Yeah, but you think that it is possible to give that last assault to poverty in India
Yes,
at its current state,
abs-
and within a finite time we can get rid of poverty in India?
absolutely.
That's a very, very assuring thing to hear from you. I'll come to the last few questions. There is another shocking data which most people don't believe me when I say, and that is women's participation in the workforce in India. India ranks 171 out of 181 countries in the world, and it is lower than Saudi Arabia and Pakistan in terms of women's participation. It was at 26% in 2010, and it has gone down in 2019 to 19%. And some say it has actually gone down to 9% in 2022. Why do you think India's labor force for women is shrinking? And what economic policies can take care of that?
So first thing I'll say about we need to look at the methodology which Pakistan and Saudi Arabia use for the data collection.
Okay, so you don't believe that it is actually?
I don't believe Saudi Arabia women's participation would be higher than in India.
It is considerably higher, actually.
No, that's what I'm saying. So we need to see the kind of data they bring out. I mean, repeatedly we have discussed this, but we have also said that we need to look a little more closely to the methodology used by even China, for that matter, for their data. So that the credibility is a problem. But having said that, I mean, so let's not compare ourselves with Pakistan or Bangladesh, but Bangladesh certainly has higher.
Yes.
They certainly have a higher rate of employment. Sri Lanka has a much higher rate of employment. So I mean, in that sense, we are not very well off in that. But once again, let me say this. One, of course, is our whole problem, gender problem that we have, which has always traditionally, I mean, even today, if you hear our great thought leaders, they say that women's place is at home and they should produce children and take care of them and say, look after their husbands and so on and so forth. This is a great belief of our great thought leaders in India. So that pervades the society. So there is always a reluctance to allow women to go out of the place. But the second part is also the fact that if unemployment rate itself is very high, then whatever jobs are available first go to men. And then women only follow suit afterwards. Because even families would rather have their son get a job than their daughter get a job. So you would see, interestingly, that Women's participation in labor force goes up when economic growth is higher and when there are more jobs going. So where women don't compete with men for jobs, and I'm not talking about high knowledge jobs. There, of course, it's different. I mean, if you are a professor, if you're better than a man, you will get it any day, for that matter. But I'm talking about average jobs. If you're not competing with men, you will still get jobs. But if you compete with men, then the the organizational pressures, social pressures, family pressures are such that women will be deterred from taking a job. So this is not so much a problem. I mean, the economic growth rate, unemployment is a problem, policy problem. But the social mindset change, I think we will all need to work towards it. It is not just the government which can do anything about it.
But the decline that has happened, you think, is because of the general decline in employment that has caused this?
Yes.
We'll come to the end of this interview. Such a lot of very interesting things that are takeaways from you. I want you to conclude by saying that what is your vision of India if you were given the reins of things in, let's say, in a time frame of 2 years, because you have made a huge difference. How can you envision India going in a 2 years time from where it stands today to what can be achieved?
One, if we can have social cohesion. This social divisiveness is greatly detrimental for the economy. It saps a lot of our energy, takes away focus from important issues. So this whole issue of a divided society, which we are now at the moment, grappling with. If somebody at the helm of the affairs was to decide today that we shall not allow divisiveness, India shall be a united country, every citizen of this country is going to be treated equally, everyone will have the same opportunity. If that happened today, I would say 30% of our problems, economic problems, will be resolved. I'm not talking about social problems. So that is one part we need to tackle today, and which is a very important part. See, when there is social anomie, social unrest, the risk is higher. Even for business, risks go higher. And then the risk premium is higher. So that all of it feeds into economic stress. Having said that, I think immediately we must begin to look at getting a strategy together in place, which means all the governmental efforts must be put together into a big strategy. Now, this strategy used to be part of the economic survey that was brought out by the government, which would put together all the issues. Whether it is roads, then what should roads be doing in terms of how they would be contributing to the economy, how ports will be declogging ports, turnaround time in the ports, how the airports have to be expanded, how airports must become more efficient, how power sector has to be improved. So I'm just saying these are simple things, but you can see the kind of impact it can have over a period of time.
Wonderful. Such a very, very interesting different kinds of views actually that you brought in through this interview. And thanks so much for talking. A great pleasure. Hope to have more of your wisdom coming into the channel at another interview. And thanks very much for joining. A great pleasure talking to you. Thanks for all the great intellectual advice that you gave.
Thank you very much, Jaya. I really enjoyed our session. Thank you.
I enjoyed it a lot too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a nice evening.
You too. Take care. Bye.